Picture two bitter rivals who have spent decades fighting over the same city, the same fans, and the same headlines, and then imagine forcing those two enemies to pour more than $1 billion of their own money into building a single home they would be chained together, inside forever. That is not a movie plot. That is the real, almost unbelievable story behind one of the most ambitious construction projects in American history. Rising out of the old marshland of East Rutherford, New Jersey, just a few miles across the water from the Manhattan skyline, stands an 80-20 500-seat colossus that cost $1.6 billion to build. And unlike almost every other giant stadium in the country, not a single dollar of that came from a public bond or a taxpayer's pocket. So here's the first thing I want you to wrestle with as we go. How on earth do you design one single building that has to feel like home to two football teams who genuinely cannot stand each other? And then comes the even stranger question, the one almost nobody thinks to ask. Why would the most famous stadium in America agree to erase its own name, tear out its entire playing field, and completely transform itself for a single soccer match in the summer of 2026? Stay with me right to the end, because the answer runs from a failed Olympic dream in Manhattan through a billion-dollar private gamble all the way to the night the World Cup final will be decided on this very ground. And here is something worth knowing before we dive in. The people who quietly stick around this channel always seem to understand how the world really works long before everyone else catches on, and that is a very good club to belong to. The two enemies who were forced to build together. To understand this stadium, you first have to understand a feud. For decades, the New York Giants and the New York Jets shared one city, one fan base split down the middle, and for a long stretch, one single building. The Jets were essentially tenants, renting space inside the old Giants stadium, living in their rival's house, watching their rival's name on the walls. And the Jets were sick of it. They wanted a home of their own, something spectacular, something that would put them on the map for good. Their dream was enormous. The Jets wanted to build a brand new West Side Stadium right in the heart of Manhattan, a glittering centerpiece tied directly to New York City's bid to host the 2012 Summer Olympics. On paper, it looked unstoppable. In reality, it collapsed. The project needed huge public funding, and it ran straight into a wall of political opposition, including powerful business interests who did not want a giant stadium next to their own properties. In 2005, the plan was killed. And when New York then lost the 2012 Olympics to London, the Jets were left with nothing. No stadium, no Olympics, no home. So the Jets did the one thing nobody expected. They swallowed their pride, walked across the river to New Jersey, and went to their oldest rival with a proposal. What if we build a new stadium together as equal partners, 50-50, sharing everything? The Giants agreed. And just like that, history was made. For the first time ever, a stadium would be designed from the ground up as the permanent shared home of two competing NFL franchises, two enemies, one building. One of the strangest partnerships in the history of American sports. A $1.6 billion gamble with their own money. Now here's where the construction story becomes truly jaw-dropping. The old Giants Stadium, built back in 1976, had cost about $78 million. This new project would cost $1.6 billion. That is more than 20 times as much. When you adjust for inflation, that is well over $2 billion in today's money, which made it the most expensive stadium in the United States at the time it was finished. But the number is not even the most shocking part. The most shocking part is where the money came from. Almost every other massive American stadium built in that era leaned heavily on public bonds and taxpayer dollars. This one did not. The Giants and the Jets financed the entire core of the stadium privately, splitting the bill right down the middle through a 50-50 joint venture. At the time, it was the largest privately funded stadium in United States history. The league itself called the idea of two rival teams building a fully private stadium together completely unprecedented. So how do you raise that kind of money without a government writing the check? Part of the answer is one of the most controversial tools in sports: personal seat licenses. Before fans could even buy season tickets, they first had to pay thousands of dollars just for the right to buy those seats. Those license fees alone raised hundreds of millions of dollars and helped fund the construction. In other words, the fans themselves helped pay to put up the very building they would later sit in. And if a story this wild, where the fans quietly bankroll the stadium they cheer in, is exactly the kind of thing that makes you lean closer to the screen, then you and this channel are clearly running on the same wavelength. And people on that wavelength tend not to wander far. The impossible design problem. Now imagine you are the architect handed this assignment. Two rival owners are paying you more than $1 billion, and they want completely opposite things. The Giants wanted a traditional old-school look: exposed steel, heavy rusticated stone, the rugged feel of a classic American fortress. The Jets wanted the exact opposite: sleek, modern, futuristic, all smooth metal and glass. One building, two visions that fundamentally clashed. How do you possibly satisfy both? The teams brought in a powerhouse group of design firms to crack it, including 360 Architecture, Ewing Cole, the Rockwell Group, and Bruce Ma Design. And the solution they came up with was genuinely brilliant. Instead of picking a side, they designed a neutral shell that could become either team on demand. The base of the stadium was wrapped in pale stone resembling limestone, giving it that solid, traditional weight the Giants wanted. Then the upper levels were sheathed in more than one, zero-zine sleek aluminum louvers and glass panels, delivering the modern, futuristic skin the Jets craved. But here is the masterstroke. Those aluminum louvers wrapping the entire exterior were designed to be lit up with color. On a Giants game day, the whole building could glow blue. On a Jets game day, it could glow green. The very same outer wall could completely change its identity overnight. Inside, the seating bowl was kept a neutral gray on purpose. They did not choose between the Giants and the Jets. They built a shapeshifter, building a giant right beside a ghost. The construction officially broke ground on September 5, 2007, and the logistics of the build were a puzzle in themselves. The new stadium was not built on some empty field far away. It was raised right next to the old Giant Stadium, separated by only about 20 meters. Think about that. They were constructing one of the largest stadiums on the continent in the shadow of the very building it was about to replace, while that old building was still hosting football games every single week. The job was handled by a heavyweight construction team. The global contractor Skanska oversaw the build, and the massive steel skeleton was espoused piece-wide and assembled piece by piece until the bones of the giant rose out of the New Jersey ground. Anyone watching from the highway, or later from any aerial view, could see two stadiums standing side by side, the past and the future briefly sharing the same patch of earth in East Rutherford, New Jersey. The scale of the materials alone is hard to picture. The project swallowed tens of thousands of tons of structural steel, enough concrete to bury a small town, and an army of construction workers laboring through brutal New Jersey winters and humid summers to keep the build on track. Every beam had to be lifted and locked into place around an oval bowl big enough to swallow a city block, all while keeping the active old stadium next door safe and operational. And then came the part that still impresses engineers. Despite the staggering scale and complexity, the stadium was actually finished roughly 5 months ahead of schedule, opening its doors on April 10, 2010. Once the new Colossus was alive, the old Giant Stadium was demolished, torn down, and eventually paved over into parking. A 34-year-old legend reduced to a parking lot, standing in the shadow of its billion-dollar replacement. And honestly, the strangest twists in this whole story are still ahead, so the people who make a habit of never missing what comes next on this channel are about to be very glad they didn't. The stadium that becomes a different team every week. With the capacity of 82,500, the finished stadium became one of the largest in the entire National Football League. And because two teams call it home, it hosts more regular season football than almost any other venue in the country. But the real engineering magic is not the size. It is the transformation. The same building has to become two completely different homes, sometimes within days of each other. Here is how it works. The seating chart never changes and the seating bowl stays neutral gray, but almost everything else flips. The team-specific end zones get repainted or recovered. The signage is swapped. The 1,000-plus exterior louvers are relit in the home team's colors. Giant corner video boards switch their branding. So a fan walking in for a Giants football match steps into what feels unmistakably like the Giants' house, and a week later a fan arriving for a Jets game walks into what feels just as unmistakably like the Jets. One physical building, two living identities. Every detail was engineered around the fan experience too. The bowl was shaped so that the view from your seat keeps you close to the action, with sight lines designed specifically for football. Hundreds of luxury suites and thousands of club seats ring the structure. And for fans who want to see it all up close on a non-game day, the venue even offers a stadium tour, letting visitors walk the field, stand in the tunnels, and step inside the locker rooms. Most people walk past a place like this and see nothing but concrete. The handful who stick around for stories like this one start spotting the genius hidden in plain sight, and once you start seeing it, it is very hard to stop. Super Bowls, WrestleMania, and the biggest concerts on Earth. A stadium this size and this expensive cannot survive on football alone, and this one was built to host the biggest events on the planet. Its crowning NFL moment came in February 2014 when it hosted Super Bowl XXLVII. That game made history as the first Super Bowl ever played outdoors in a cold weather region, a bold gamble the league had always been afraid to take. Tens of thousands of fans braved the New Jersey winter to watch a championship decided in the open air. But the events go far beyond football. The stadium has hosted enormous WWE spectacles, including WrestleMania, packing tens of thousands of screaming fans into the bowl for one of wrestling's biggest nights. And then there are the concerts. Show have turned this football field into the center of the music universe. The all-time attendance record at the venue was set by a single concert that drew more than 89,000 people through the gates. That is the secret to the whole business model. Football funds it, but concerts, wrestling, college games, and international events keep it alive and roaring almost year-round. On any given month, the calendar can swing from an NFL clash to a sold-out stadium concert to a global soccer friendly, with crews tearing down one setup and building another in a matter of days. Few buildings on Earth flip between identities as relentlessly as this one, and the next chapter is the one that is about to put this stadium in front of the entire planet, the day it stopped being MetLife. In recent years, the stadium has increasingly turned its attention to the world's most popular sport. It hosted major international soccer matches, and in 2025, it staged the final of the FIFA Club World Cup, proving it could handle the global game on the biggest stage. But all of that was just a warm-up for what is coming next, and it triggered one of the most fascinating temporary transformations any stadium has ever attempted. The stadium was chosen to host the final of the 2026 FIFA World Cup on July 19, 2026. The championship match of the first World Cup ever expanded to 48 teams, with 8 World Cup games scheduled at the venue in total. But hosting the world's biggest match comes with strict rules, and they forced 2 dramatic changes. First, the name. FIFA does not allow corporate sponsor names on its venues, so for the duration of the tournament, the building legally sheds its identity and is known simply as the New York, New Jersey Stadium. The most famous stadium name in American sports switched off for the summer. Natural grass pitch for the tournament, then maintaining it to exacting world-class standards. A stadium built for American football is being physically re-engineered, surface and name and all, just to crown the champions of global soccer. Because this is where the hidden stories live. So step back and take in the full sweep of this story. A stadium born out of a failed Olympic dream in Manhattan, funded with more than $1 billion of 2 rival owners' own money, without a public bond in sight. Designed as a shapeshifter that can transform from one team's home into its enemy's home overnight. Built ahead of schedule right beside the very stadium it replaced. On July 19, 2026, More than 1 billion people around the world will be staring at the view from inside this stadium as the champions of the planet are decided on a freshly laid field in a building that two bitter rivals once swore they would never share. That is the strange, brilliant, impossible story of how America built it. They are the ones who saw it coming, who understood it first, who were simply in the room early. Everyone else catches up far too late. By now you already know exactly which one of those two people you would rather be. And tonight, on this very ground, the whole world is about to find out who wins it all.